Welcome to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. I'm your host, Coach Justin. I'm here with Coach Katie, and this is episode 112. And today we're going to start a three-part series, or at least that's the plan for it right now, is a three-part series on masters athletes. What are some of the relevant issues and topics that are pertinent to older athletes as we progress in the sport? I mean, it seems relatively, I don't know. I'm at a loss for words. My brain's not really working right now.
I mean, I think it's pertinent.
It's pertinent as we all get older. We're all going to be faced with these issues and challenges as we continue to stay in the sport, because we're in this for longevity and durability. So as we progress and get older, things are going to change. What are some of the things that are going to change? How do you deal with these changes? Are some of these issues, can they be delayed in terms of their severity, slow the progression, or are there things that we just have to tolerate and adjust to in order to accommodate things that we cannot fight against? So, I mean, everybody loses to Father Time. So, we just have to figure out how to manage it effectively and efficiently. So we wanted to come to you guys and at least set the table a little bit. The issues that we're going to bring up today, we're going to have solutions. So we're not going to just leave you hanging and have to wait for episode 2 and 3 in order to find a solution. So we've organized this in such a way that we'll introduce a few of these topics, come up with some solutions, our thoughts on these particular issues, and then we'll progress from there. So Katie, do you want to, should we just kind of tell the listeners on kind of what's going on? It's been kind of a wild and crazy week. How have you been doing?
I'm okay. I just feel torn a little bit into different directions, and it's still the summertime, so I'm feeling overwhelmed just trying to manage being a mom and work. And then, I have had some friendship stuff where I've had some friends kind of reaching out, needing a little bit more from me. So that's fine. But it's I just feel I've been kind of going in a lot of different directions, and while trying to sort of maintain some sort of training plan. So I feel a little bit overwhelmed would be the way I would describe the way I feel, but I think I'm going to be okay. It's just, I'm just trying to enjoy, be thankful for, I don't know, being grateful for the things in my life that are going well, and trying to, just realize that it's okay, because it's probably going to slow down here in a few weeks, but it has been a bit overwhelming. So that's how I feel right now. I would say this is the mood for me. I don't know. You sounded busy too. So any updates or?
Yeah, I've got a new plan that's kicking off on Monday, actually. So there's a race that's here in the area. It's called the Giant Acorn Race, and it's actually the Virginia State Championships, and for the club that I'm a sponsor of, so the Richmond Tri Club, I came up with a group training plan for the Olympic race, and that one started already. So I think we're about week 3 or 4 into that plan. So that's going along really, really well. Athletes are performing well. And so now on Monday, the sprint plan kicks off. So that's going to be an 8-week plan. Got some athletes that are signed up. So really excited. I was working today on kind of building the plan a little bit as they're going to start training. So kind of excited to see how this progresses. Last night I went to the pool for my swim and run, and it was a long, stressful day, and I felt like death warmed over, and I really didn't want to do my workouts, but I got them done. And today I felt great. I went out and did my long ride with a couple guys from the club. I really stepped outside of my comfort zone because I am a lone wolf trainer. I don't particularly like to train with others. And I just like to kind of just go into my own world and go at my own pace and my own intensity effort. So I kind of stepped outside and met 2 new guys today from the club. One guy I had already met. Another guy was a brand new meeting for me. And I had a great ride, felt fantastic. And so I have pulled the trigger I know that a couple weeks ago we had a podcast where I said I hadn't really decided on what I was going to do yet for some races. And so I think it was this week that I pulled the trigger. I'm actually in like week 4 of the training plan for it, but I hadn't officially registered. So what I'm going to be doing is there is the Kinetic Patriot race that is in early September, and so it's an Olympic race on Saturday and a sprint race on Sunday. And I decided to go ahead and do the Olympic aqua bike. So it's going to be a swim and a swim and a bike, no run, because I really wanted to see like how hard I could go on the bike. I really want to get a good idea on what my bike fitness is and how deep it is. So I said, well, let's just nix the run and let's just go out and ride as hard as I can for the 25 miles. And then the next day, I'm going to turn around and I'm going to do the sprint triathlon on Sunday. So that's one whole weekend of racing. And then 2 weeks later, I'm actually going to be doing the Giant Acorn. Same format. I'm going to do the aqua bike on the Olympic aqua bike on Saturday and then the sprint on Sunday. So not only am I coaching the athletes for the race,
You're going to be
I'm going to be one of those athletes towing the line with them as well. So I'm kind of excited.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah.
A little on the nervous side, but I've never really done kind of those back-to-back races before, and I'm really looking to race them, not just complete. So I really want to see some performance. So it's going to be a hard weekend for those two.
Fun. Yeah,
it's going to be interesting.
Fun. Yeah.
So that's what's going on here.
Sounds fun to me. That's cool. I know I don't really have any like super updates for my racing other than I'm doing a mile race on next Friday, but I don't really have a lot of high expectations for that. So it's just kind of happening. I'm not really sure I have a lot to share, but the High Rocks training will start sometime the end of August or early September. So that's exciting, but I don't have a lot of like training related updates at this point. You mentioned like running with other people. I have been going to do Tuesday night track workouts they have here in Fort Collins, and I've been doing those, and that's actually been really great to be with other people. I kind of forget how much I enjoy and get motivation from running with other people. So I've been really enjoying that, even though it's like 90 degrees and really hot at 6 p.m. I've been trying to do that more, and it's actually been really enjoyable. So I'm like, maybe I need to start running more with other people again. I'm like you, I like to do it by myself, but yeah, that's been enjoyable. So I do think training with others can be beneficial, but I don't know. That's my only update really from a training perspective. I'm just trying to hang on to running whenever I can. And my strength training has kind of gone a little bit down the, not as consistent, but I'm trying to give myself be nice to myself, not be too hard. So it's okay.
This week I did a bike clinic for the club. And so we got together on Thursday night, and I think had about 12 to 15. I think it was about 15 people showed up, and I went over some training and racing strategies for the mount line and dismount line, tips on descending and ascending for hill climbs, how to corner. So we went over some skills, and I had a really, really fun time with that. And it was the first session. It was the first clinic that I've ever done, and so I was super kind of nervous about it. But now that I got one under me, I'm ready to do some more clinics. So I have a swim clinic that I'm going to be doing. I think in September. So I'll do a coached open water swim with the club, and so
fun. That's awesome.
Lots and lots that's going on here.
Yeah, so. Yeah. I know you've had a lot on your plate. So hopefully today, I think we had kind of come up with this plan and to talk about the master's side, because I was like, I think a lot of our demographic, that people that listen to the podcast are like 30s or 40s or beyond. I think we've determined not too many like high school younger athletes listening, probably because of who we are. But so we were like, let's just talk about this. The topics we're going to discuss are all things I think people are kind of maybe going through or thinking about or wondering about or worrying about. And so I think having kind of like, well, this is what could be a concern and maybe a few things to discuss of like how you can overcome them or things you can work on to maybe, or if it's something that's truly, like you said, like this is just inevitable, but how can we best like do our best to manage some of these sort of age
Yeah.
related things? So I thought it would be helpful. So we hopefully we'll have enough for 3 discussions, because we're going to try to keep it a little bit on the shorter end instead of going 2 hours in. So
Yeah.
let's do you want to start? I don't know. I we can start with
Yeah,
any of
sure.
them. So you choose.
I'll actually take the body composition changes. So that's one that I think
Well,
is
okay.
mm,
If we're going to talk about that, let's talk
yeah.
about, because I think that's kind of related to a few others. So, like, maybe let's
Yeah,
just
let's
talk
let's
first
let's do the
about
hormone one
hormonal.
changes first. Yeah.
hmm Because I think this is a big one, especially for men, but also for women. Because, and maybe at some point, if we have enough interest, we could do more of a deep dive into like perimenopause and menopause. I mean, it's a topic that does involve a little bit of expertise that I feel somewhat like I can talk about it, but I also am not a physician. We're not going to go into a deep dive into this, but I do think it's important to kind of mention some of these changes, and then also with men, mostly testosterone, but women, I think unfortunately we have it a little bit harder because of the changes. And then the unfortunate thing about it is, as women are going through perimenopause, there's a lot of erratic ups and downs in estrogen. And so
Mhm.
it's not like it's a slow decline necessarily, but a lot of the symptoms that women experience, like the hot flashes, like the sleep disturbances, maybe some of the mental side of it like is frustrating, because it's kind of going up and down. There's not a slow decline in estrogen. It's kind of these like periods of time where there's higher estrogen and lower estrogen, and then eventually the estrogen levels kind of bottom out, and a woman might experience full menopause. But it's that like sort of erratic, hormonal fluctuations that make this so hard. And if you kind of think about it as a female, if you're experiencing this and you're having things like hot flashes and not sleeping well, or, estrogen can have other impacts on the body. Like, I mean, obviously, we'll talk a little bit about bone health, but it can kind of influence glucose levels. It can kind of have a little bit of a metabolic like influence, and changes in body composition can be related to these fluctuations that we'll talk about. So I think women have a particularly hard time in this because there's so much up and down. And so I think we can kind of talk. I'm not going to talk about I mean, I'll mention hormone replacement, but I do think that is a whole hot topic on its own, of whether a woman wants to go through and have hormone replacement. I think there is some interesting information now about how that's actually more beneficial, in some of the past research that's maybe not been like statistically done correctly, or maybe there's
Mm.
some like misinformation that's out there about that. But that's kind of an individual thing to decide. Of course, might help with some of these symptoms. I mean, do you have any thoughts on that? Obviously, as a man, you're probably like, that's the
Are you
stuff.
saying that we're starting to see some scientific evidence that there are more benefits to hormone replacement therapy
hmm
for women than what
hmm
has been typically
Yeah, so
promoted in the past?
I'd
Is
have
that
to
what
I'd
you're
have
saying?
to like pull up the research article, but there
Mhm.
was back in the like maybe 90s, early 2000s, I think it was one of the nurse studies, or there was like a study that they did where they put a group of women on estrogen hormone replacement, and they had like a placebo group without, but they found that in the study, supposedly, that there was an increased risk of like heart disease, and I believe cancer, maybe ovarian cancer, breast cancer. So they kind of were like, then there was all this like stuff on the media, like, don't,
Mhm.
hormone replacement is, this is happening, this is what the research is showing. But from just a quick overview of kind of what happened, and more recently, there's people that kind of look back into that study and realize that the type of estrogen they were using was maybe not the most bioidentical type to what we would normally have in our body, and then B, some of the statistical piece of that, the way they did the statistical analysis actually like kind of overhyped the risk. And
Right.
so now we're sort of saying, oh, wait, like there's actually a ton of benefits. So like women who go on hormone replacement can actually see it. So lack of estrogen can cause potentially or exacerbate something like dementia or Alzheimer's. Bone mineral density is a big one. So as estrogen declines in women, their risk of osteoporosis goes up. So you'd be able to maintain that. So there's a lot of actual potential benefits. But I think that's individual because sometimes if someone, it's replacing a hormone. So if someone has risk for like breast cancer or ovarian cancer, they have a higher risk for certain cancers. They may not benefit, from
Mm.
it, or it could be risky. So it's definitely an individual thing. I'm considering it. I mean, to be full transparency here, like I don't really want to suffer, and I'd rather I want to be able to maintain my body composition. I'd like to maintain my bone mineral density. I don't want to get Alzheimer's. Like I'm looking at all these benefits and the risk of maybe having cancer, or even a slight risk of increased heart issues or stroke or something like that is I've kind of weighed the pros and cons of myself, and I feel like for me, I'm probably going to do it. I haven't
Mm.
started yet because I haven't had significant enough symptoms, and it's really hard to find a practitioner that will help you with that. But but you have to kind of weigh those pros and cons, and obviously, like taking the replacement or doing the estrogen therapy or progesterone therapy can help you maybe not suffer so much, but that's an individual thing. I think I wouldn't
Yeah.
want to ever make that decision for somebody, but I'll definitely be transparent in my decision to do that at some point. But I think that's a lot of those symptoms are hard to manage just naturally. Like there's only
Hmm.
so much, you can take supplements for helping with sleep. You can obviously the healthier you eat, the more fruits and vegetables and whole grains and nutrient dense foods and anti-inflammatory foods and things like that you can eat, the better. But there's still you can't naturally just kind of replace those hormones. Like, you know what I mean? You can't
Right. Yeah.
you can only do stuff to support yourself through those symptoms, but there's not much you can do. I mean, these symptoms are part of that, and there's no there's a lot of sort of, I don't know, like tinctures and teas that are promoted that really have no efficacy for this, like black cohosh and others that are sort of, maybe they'll help a little bit, but I don't think they're going to make a big difference. And I think this whole market of perimenopause right now is it's getting a really big, it's great because there's more discussion about it, but there's also with that and with a lot of wanting alternatives, there's a lot of snake oil stuff that comes along with that sometimes too, unfortunately. But for people who are endurance athletes, yeah, I mean, I think it's hard because I don't know if I necessarily have a specific diet or, um, there's things that can help, but there's nothing that you can do to make those changes or those symptoms go away. It's just a natural part of aging. So the only way to do that would be to replace the hormones that you're losing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Um,
So it's a
I,
tough one.
the
Yeah.
the only one of the issues that I see is there is a drastic difference, I think, in the hormone replacement across the genders. So, I mean, are there any performance enhancing benefits to estrogen replacement therapy for women? Because we know there are for
For men.
testosterone
Yeah.
replacement therapy for
Mm-hmm.
men. So it's kind of like this uneven application of hormone replacement as we get older. I think men are less
Right.
likely to come forward saying, hey, I have low testosterone, which is very common in endurance athletes. And so, if they start saying, hey, my doctor has put me on hormone replacement therapy, I'm on TRT, but I'm in normal ranges, because that can lead to
No, it's
ineligibility
a tricky
for
situation, isn't it?
championships and things.
Yeah.
If you're trying to go to the 70.3 world champs, or you're trying to, grab a podium and go to Kona, the admission of being on TRT, even though it's prescribed by your family physician and you're within the range that is deemed to be appropriate, you become ineligible. So men are kind of held at a little bit of a disadvantage in terms
Yeah.
of the replacement. So I was just curious on
I
what your
agree.
thoughts
Yeah, it's
are.
hard. It's such a, I mean, the only thing with estrogen and progesterone is that the replacement is just to ensure a woman is kind of within, like, it's because if you take too much, too much estrogen is not an extra benefit. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's going to be
Mm-hmm.
some, you kind of want to just get that really just quite right. But it's not like testosterone, where obviously they're like taking a larger, I mean, there's side effects to it, but it's kind of like once you're above the physiological, the general, like, physiological levels that are deemed normal, there is like a benefit to that, especially for women as well with testosterone. So it is a little bit of, I think this is where it gets really quite tricky, because I don't think there should be, if you have a reason to take it because it's low as a man and you're just trying to supplement it to like normal levels because you don't feel good and you're having symptoms, is that the same as somebody who's got normal levels but they're taking it and it's going like forward in a performance benefit? And that's where it gets really tricky. With women, it's hard because you're right. It's like, this is a natural thing that happens, but I and I don't know. I guess I'm not really super aware of like hormone replacement in women, and if that's something that, I don't think so. I don't think that's, but I don't really know if it's something that's being like that you have to disclose if you're training for worlds or something like that. But maybe because it's not going, there's no benefit to going above and beyond. You're just replacing the levels that are lost, and there's no performance. The only performance benefit I can think to like taking estrogen is just maintaining like your bone density and maintain. There's no like, I think it's just maybe being able to feel like yourself for longer. But there's not going to be like a benefit like to, taking those. Like, men wouldn't want to take estrogen or progesterone because that would just throw, like, they have those like hormones in their body, but they're just, but there's no benefit to having them additionally. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
It's
it does.
more so for women. It's more, from my perspective, it's not because I'm not trying to gain some sort of advantage with it where I'm going to be performing better. I just want to be able to feel good and recover and sleep and be sane, through my 40s and not and be able to get out and train and even just go for my runs, because I know and I've talked to women who are struggling so badly. They barely can get out the door to run. They're so tired. They're just like, the perimenopause symptoms have just been like extreme and they've suffered. And so for them, it might just be like trying to feel normal again, whereas like maybe the testosterone piece, because there's such benefits to it potentially, it's more deemed as, muscle mass and other things that you might gain from it from a, performance standpoint. I think that's probably the bigger difference there. But it's true. I mean, men, as that's the other thing we talk about women, but men, as they age, there is a gradual testosterone decline. Is it, I mean, I wouldn't really ever say there's anything wrong if your testosterone's declining and you want to bring it up to physiological and normal levels to feel good. But it's tricky because it can be a performance enhancer. So testosterone gets a little tricky. And then you kind of have like, I mean, this is a whole other discussion just on its own, but within the aging population, there's this whole big boom of peptides. People are using not just, I mean, we talked about the GLP-1s, which are essentially like a type of peptide, but there's other types of peptides that enhance performance and keep us maybe youthful for longer, potentially. I mean, there's a lot we don't know about peptides, and they can be quite risky and dangerous as well, because we just don't know what the long-term effects are, and you're getting them they're not prescribed. So there's kind of like this Wild West. We're not going to get into that today because I wasn't prepared for a peptide discussion. But
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot out there, and you've got people who are getting in trouble who are older athletes, masters athletes, who are just maybe trying to be longevity. Maybe they're taking things like testosterone or peptides, and they're just wanting to participate, but they're doing well enough that they're maybe making it to something like Worlds or something. Yeah, like, or they're making it the top 3 masters, and it starts to get to be a real slippery slope into like doping,
Yeah.
doping violations. And is that fair? Right?
So
Is
what
it
kind of
fair?
resolution, what do we think would be the solution for men when it comes to hormone changes as we age and we go
Mm-hmm.
into the masters categories? If you're not willing to do the TRT, which is reasonable,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
then what else can a man do in order to
Like,
help
we'll talk about this
to
a little
help?
bit more. Yeah. The things that are more, there are some natural things you can do. I just don't know how potent these are. But strength training, which we'll talk a lot more about next time, but is a potent testosterone booster just naturally. I think just one of the biggest things I see with low testosterone, and it's not necessarily I mean, I think as we age is just it's like just in general for all men is underfueling can be a testosterone dropping thing. So just making sure you're getting enough protein and nutrients and fueling adequately. And then there are some nutrients like zinc and selenium that can be helpful. There's a lot of like supplements out there that probably don't have a lot of efficacy. So I wouldn't necessarily count on that, but you could try them. But it's just kind of like, I mean, that's a big, big thing, but I do think if we're going to be trying to keep it even, maybe there is something to do with if you're taking testosterone, you have to get tested and make sure you can prove that or you do a P test or something, and prove it's in physiological levels, that it's not going above whatever that range is for what's considered normal. Does that make sense? So maybe there's something
Yeah.
there, but then it involves a lot more testing and there's money involved with that. So are we going to test every single male athlete that's going into Worlds you know what I mean? Like, then is that, I don't know. It's hard. I can't make that decision, but I kind of think that might be fair because men also have the right to be able to maintain feeling good and having normal levels of testosterone as they age, I think,
Yeah.
personally. I don't think, we can say women have the right to get, take hormone replacement and feel normal and continue. There's things you can do, but I can't guarantee that strength training on its own and having certain nutrients and fueling adequately all on their own are going to be able to keep your testosterone at normal levels as you age. It just might be
Yeah.
something that happens, and that's a tough one. Yeah, I don't I don't know if I have the answer there. I think it should be something that people should be able to do if they feel like they need to. I think it gets like, oh, it's allowed, and so people will take it if something's going to be allowed. That people
Yeah.
like to take it to the next level.
I'm kind of torn. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we just got through the Tour de France, and
Oh,
I
right.
mean, right at the last stage, they woke up the 2 top riders at like
Mm-hmm.
2 a.m. in the morning, right before the most challenging stage of the race, and had their drug testing. So I mean,
Right.
I understand the theory behind it because for microdosing, if they would have waited until they woken up, it would have already kind of gone out of their system, but they would have still had the benefits still sticking around. So I
Mm-hmm.
understand why they did it, but the question becomes, well, at what point should TRT be allowed? I mean, are we
Right.
talking that, okay, TRT isn't allowed for anybody who is under the age of 40? And, if they are tested, then they have to produce documented doctor's orders, or, it must be within the reference ranges. I mean, they can't be above, because I mean there comes a point where if you're below the reference ranges, it doesn't matter how much strength training you do. You just really you don't get you don't get as much of the benefits from it. So it's almost like it feels like it's like I'm just like sitting here spinning my wheels in the weight room. I can't get stronger. I can't put on muscle. Nothing is working, and I'm lifting all kinds of weights all the time, but the low testosterone levels aren't allowing me to really reap those benefits. So at what point in time do we say, look, we have enough scientific evidence, and if we want longevity in the sport, this is a conversation that has to take place, but it just opens it up to abuse, as we've seen in other sports as well, which is a shame because, a couple bad apples spoils the
The whole
bunch.
thing. Yeah. That's
So
the thing. So there was some debate. There was this gentleman named Cameron Haynes. He has like a YouTube channel. He's kind of does a lot of ultra running, and he's like a bow hunter, and that's what I was referring to. I think he did pretty well in a marathon. He got, I don't know, masters, maybe, I don't know the placement, but somebody else brought the fact that he's open about taking testosterone and I think peptides or something like that. And he openly says it and he promotes it even. And somebody was calling him out like, hey, you just did this marathon. It might have even been like a U.S. championship or something. So it wasn't just a marathon, it was something else that was a little bit more of an issue. And then that's kind of sparked this whole debate about what, and it's really related to aging because he is an older a master's age athlete. He's an older gentleman, and his thing is he's just trying to be like longevity. He wants to continue to perform well, and he is really doing it for the longevity and being able to feel good and perform and do these things, these different kinds of races even as he ages. And so, well, I mean, I don't know. I can't really knock him for that but then at the same time, if he's competing against somebody who's not taking all that and somebody else is clean, essentially, without any added drugs or peptides or any of that, which is all, is all bans, essentially, then is that fair? And this is the debate, right? Like, because I think as masters athletes, a lot of people are thinking about this, like, especially because there's an explosion of this, like, I see it on the internet of, people like Cameron who are sort of like promoting this type of thing. And, I think a lot of athletes want to, I know I do, like, long as I can maintain my performance. And I just want to be able to get out the door and feel good and be able to go run and be able to continue running and maybe participating even as old as I can be. And if there's something that's going to help me be able to do that, maybe, hopefully it doesn't have a lot of side effects. That's tempting to do because I already can feel some of the changes that are occurring as I'm aging, and it sucks. Let's just be honest. It kind of sucks. You want to feel you're never going to be 20. There's no way you're ever going to be able to get back to that level, but at least some people just can't even get out the door because they're in pain. So if there's, or they're having issues, or some women with their perimenopause are just like really struggling because of sleep and hot flashes and all these other things. They can't even maintain a training plan very well because of their symptoms. When it comes to these like hormone replacements, to deny or have to make that choice, especially as an older athlete, it's hard. And I don't think I have an answer because I know I feel that way. Like whatever I need to do to stay healthy and be able to maintain my fitness and be able to compete as long as I can, I want to be able to do, and I think most of us who are aging probably feel similar.
Yeah.
So it's hard to pass judgment, I think.
Yeah. But talk a little bit about bone health concerns, because this is something that I don't know a whole lot about. And I actually have a couple athletes on my roster who are perimenopause age.
Let's move on to bone health.
I want to understand a little bit more, because I'm trying to manage their stress, and if they're runners and they have bone health issues, I need to be aware on how to manage that.
Okay, so bone health. So along with bone health, I do want to mention here that we kind of think of bone health only in women, particularly because women tend to struggle with bone issues more than men because of menopause and the decline in estrogen. But men do also have the risk of osteoporosis and osteopenia. And honestly, there's a connection there with both estrogen, and men actually do have estrogen also, but
Yeah,
also like testosterone. So there can be a benefit, something to, I don't want men to be like, oh, it's bone health isn't my issue, because it still can be, but we
absolutely.
see it more in women. So there's some risk factors for bone. Obviously, I just mentioned the menopause piece, but there are some things that if you decide you don't want to do hormone replacement, that you can consider for bone health. Low energy availability, which is just basically not fueling adequately or under eating. And honestly, I see this some in men and in men as they get older, as they are worried about body changes or composition changes, but I see this a lot in women who
Yeah.
are older, because maybe there's a little bit more fat mass in the middle, in the midsection, and they maybe start to see those changes, and they'll sort of make this assumption that they have to now not eat very much, like, oh, I've got to
Yeah.
start eating less, and that's just going to make this whole bone health issue so much worse. So I would highly encourage women to just, please, if you're running and training, don't get into this vicious cycle of like under eating on top of also having low levels of estrogen, because you're just going to put yourself into a pretty big deficit in terms of bone mineral density. So maybe, maybe speaking with someone or getting some help with that. It may, your changes in body composition may be also just related to just changes in the way you're eating and the time you're eating. And so it may be something else that you can work on, but low energy availability is actually fairly common in older athletes too, not just our youth. So low calcium and vitamin D. So that's another one that we want to look. Those are two nutrients that are really important for building bone. Magnesium is another one that we
Mm.
need for building bone. So looking into, sometimes I'll see people as they age, maybe they just don't tolerate milk as well, so they're not consuming dairy products. Maybe they're not in the sun as much. And so really looking into those nutrients and making sure that you're eating enough calcium, foods with calcium, or if you have to do a supplement, but trying to get, so if it's not dairy, there's calcium in like tofu and leafy greens and certain nuts and seeds and things like that, but it's just harder it's just really abundant in our dairy products. So if you have to supplement, but just like maybe even look into foods that have, sort of do a little inventory to see if you're getting enough. And enough is like 12 to 1500 milligrams a day. Up to 2000 is adequate. If you're way under that, then you're probably not getting enough. And then vitamin D, like I said, maybe we're training outside, but maybe we're not outside as much, potentially for other reasons as we get older. So skin cancer risk concerns, that's another reason we wouldn't be outside. So looking into vitamin D. And again, if you have to take a supplement, it's pretty common to have to supplement that, because there's really not enough foods with vitamin D to be able to get enough through diet, unless you want to eat like mushrooms and different things, like weird things like that, like fish. I don't know,
Yeah.
wild caught salmon, which is fine, which is great, but it's just not enough. Or vitamin D milk, but that would be like whole milk, which, maybe people aren't consuming. So getting
Mhm.
enough vitamin D, and then magnesium tends to be lower in athletes' diet. So maybe also considering, I just take like a magnesium before bed, which also helps with sleep. So, something like that. And then just like a lot of mileage or running a lot without strength training. So we'll definitely talk more about strength training, but building bone, running is not enough to build bone. Like
Right.
running alone, it's like if you start a running program and you haven't been running, it is enough, maybe initially, but once you get used to that and your body's used to that movement and that force on the body, like it's not enough. You need to build bone by basically having something that stimulates bone growth. And one of the major ways you can do that as you age is jumping things, but you have to be kind of careful. You don't want to overdo this, but like jumping exercises where you're maybe like skipping rope or doing some sort of box jump plyometric thing, not too much, can help,
Mhm.
but also strength training. So another reason we'll dive into strength training next time. But I think, those are things I would definitely want to, if you have someone struggling with this, like calcium, vitamin D, magnesium, making sure they're getting enough, eating enough, but strength training or jumping plyometric type exercises, and maybe just making sure if they're worried about it, getting a screening. So doing like a DEXA scan. It's like you can have, if you have if someone's listening and they're worried about it and they don't know where their bone mineral density is, you can sometimes get a referral from a physician. It's just like a scan thing that scans your whole body, and it gives you, sometimes it can give you body composition, but it does give you like a bone mineral density score, and you can kind of see where you are. And I almost recommend anybody listening just do that, so you know, no matter where you are, so you have something to compare it to. So if you do a DEXA scan now, like in 10 years, you can do another one and see if you've lost bone. But even just to see if you have some level of osteopenia or osteoporosis starting to develop, so you can take action to, you know, build bone or just try to maintain bone. Really, it's hard to build bone as we age, but things that can kind of maintain our bone mineral density. So those are things I would recommend. I don't know if you have any thoughts or.
Do you think that there's a particular age where somebody should just start the supplementation of calcium and vitamin D?
I mean, not necessarily. I just think it's, I mean, I think it's just more, if you're not getting those nutrients through food, but if you're worried about it, you can. I just don't want you to overdo the calcium. I mean, vitamin D is a little hard. I mean, unless you're taking 10,000 IUs a day, which is a really high dose, like it's hard to overdo it. But calcium can be a little, you know, we don't want to overdo it. So I just tell people if they're worried about it, maybe they can take like a 500 milligram calcium supplement, you know, kind of almost like supplementing their diet. Like you don't want to overdo it, because I think people get worried and then they're like, oh my gosh, and they'll start to take all this stuff, that like excess amounts of things. But if you just are worried about it, just something to kind of supplement your diet a little bit, like something like 500 milligrams of calcium a day to kind of supplement whatever you're doing. As long as you're not eating like a ton of dairy and you're just now getting like over 2,000 milligrams, and now you're, you know, adding all the supplements in. But it could be, I think somebody just needs to assess that for themselves. If they're vegan or don't have dairy for some reason, maybe a supplement isn't a bad idea, honestly. So
are there costs associated with consuming too much calcium and too much vitamin D? Can it be toxic to a certain extent?
Yeah, vitamin D can be potentially, but it has to be pretty high doses. It's a fat soluble vitamin, so it gets stored in our fat cells. So there's other fat soluble vitamins that have more of a toxicity risk, but there has been known cases of vitamin D toxicity. So you just don't want to like be like, oh, this is good for me, I'm gonna just excessively take it. Calcium is also like an electrolyte, and we can have too much calcium, and that maybe I kind of think of like calcification of arteries, or like, you know, like hardening. So if you're taking too much, I suppose there could be a risk of other things that we don't want to be like hardened, you know, like we don't want to have calcium deposits in, or it's also, you know, technically kind of, you know, magnesium and sodium and potassium are the big electrolytes, but there is some responsibility of calcium and like muscle force production and things like that. So I suppose it could kind of have some issues there, but I just don't, you know, it's just like anything. If we take too much, we'll pee some of it out, we'll get rid of it. But if it starts to accumulate, it's going to cause problems, you know, otherwise, if that makes sense. So we just want to be careful to not overdo it. Yeah.
That makes sense.
So that's a really big thing with bone health. I don't know if I have anything too crazy to add there that I can think of. Those are I can't think of it.
Yeah, I can't think of anything else that that would be relevant for this particular episode. I think it would be relevant for when we start talking about how we should maybe approach training for masters athletes versus, you know, the younger population, because that might be something to take into consideration in terms of run volume, which is, you know, you have to have the bone remodeling in order to keep from getting the stress fractures. So, but I mean, I know a pretty younger athlete who's been dealing with femoral fractures, and so that was something that I was talking to him about. I was like, have you gone and had some lab work to make sure that there's no deficiencies or anything? And he's like, yeah, no, I'm perfectly healthy. So it threw me for a loop trying to figure out like why this guy has been struggling so much with it. But I don't know if is there maybe a
I
genetic
mean,
component to
yeah, there could be a
bone health?
yeah. There can be a genetic component to it. Like when I'm thinking of someone who is having a fracture, but everything else is ruled out, like they really are not underfueling, because I think that's a major one.
Okay.
Even if they have adequate calcium. So I would just double check, be like, are you, because ephemeral stress fracture, I mean, that's common in somebody who's kind of having low energy availability. So I think if you like that one, I would rule out for sure. Maybe having a DEXA just to make sure that there isn't something more serious happening with the bone mineral density. But if those are all ruled out, it could be genetic. I do think there are some genetic factors of people who are just more prone to like some people just have osteoporosis like in their family, history.
Okay.
But I would definitely, if it's a young
Yeah,
guy,
this guy's younger
I
than
would,
me. So,
yeah, I would have him. I would just make sure he's not, for some reason, you'll be surprised how prevalent like under fueling, even if somebody isn't trying to, because you're active and you're just it can be easy sometimes not to get enough to eat. And you don't
okay.
really think about it. I don't know. Like I don't know because I don't know him, but it might be worth
And
digging into.
the aging process just exacerbates this.
Yeah,
So
it
it's
just
like
makes it
if you're
worse. Yeah.
underfueling, that's one strike. But if you're older and underfueling, well, you got two strikes against you. Is the kind of
Mm-hmm.
the thought that I'm getting from this conversation.
Yeah, I'm
So
like worried if it's a younger person, what's going to happen, as they're older, if they keep getting stress fractures like that. This kind of
okay,
makes me a little bit concerned, but I guess it could be other factors. I mean, there are other things. And so just kind of digging into it and figuring out why it's happening and maybe working with like a PT to make sure it's not like a biomechanical issue.
yeah,
Also, but yeah,
okay. All right, so that let's move forward now and let's talk about sleep. Um,
sleep. Okay.
I can honestly say that this is probably something that I have struggled with for years. And so,
Yeah.
as I've gotten older, it's gotten a little bit worse. I had pretty severe sleep apnea when I was younger, and I ended up having when I had gastric bypass, it kind of fixed it. And so I no longer had it, and I had no more symptoms. I wasn't snoring, or I didn't have the obstructive sleep apnea. So it's like I didn't stop breathing and all that kind of stuff like I did before. Now, now I'm still around a similar weight, but the snoring is back like with a vengeance. And my poor wife, I feel bad for her.
I
And
know.
it's getting to the point now where I have to call my doctor for a referral to have another sleep study done, because it definitely impacts the quality of my sleep. And so,
Right.
I'm getting up in the morning and I still feel, a little tired, but I mean, I feel fine, but I'm kind of curious on, what hindrances am I facing because my sleep isn't as high quality
Yeah.
as it should be. So, let's talk a little bit about how how the quality of the sleep changes as we get older, and maybe some of the remedies that they have to consider in order to fix it.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes the sleep changes can be related to the hormonal changes, like I mentioned for women, just kind of like hot flashes or waking up. Progesterone and changes there can kind of influence sleep. Low testosterone can kind of make you feel tired, and so there are some of those changes related to just the hormones that we already spoke about that can influence
Hmm.
sleep. But I think also just in general, like there can be like a decrease in the deep sleep, like just the ability to kind of like, well, not even deep sleep, just the ability to kind of get to sleep and stay asleep can be an issue. For older people, just kind of just general aging, maybe it's hormonal related, or maybe it's just other factors that are influencing it, as we age. You mentioned like sleep apnea and snoring and things like that. So I do think it's worth, because that's like its own health. That's like a separate issue that probably actually does happen more so as we age. I mean, there's a lot of factors that can influence that, but it may increase like the likelihood of it as we age. So if you need to get a sleep study because you think that maybe that's an issue, you're waking up kind of gasping or snoring really loudly, and your partner's kind of mentioning that, or there's some you're not waking up feeling rested despite feeling like you slept all night. Like those are all signs that maybe something else is going on. So there are sleep experts in sleep. You know, you can do a sleep study. They'll, I think, check for sleep apnea, maybe other things. So I think it's valuable to do that if you need to, because there may be something more medical going on. And then, you know, supplements and sleep strategies that I might talk about are not going to be helpful because that's not really solving the underlying issue. So I think if you're really struggling, like digging into maybe if there's something more medical going on and getting that figured out. But if it's not that, and you're just kind of not sleeping well or waking up early in the morning, or like I do sometimes, luckily it hasn't been terrible lately, but I'll wake up at like 2 or 3 in the morning and then takes me an hour or two to go back to sleep, which is like almost like the worst. Like it's like sometimes I get these bouts of insomnia and I can't always, other than maybe certain points in my cycle or something, I can't always pinpoint the culprit. It's like, what the heck? Because I'll do everything right. Or maybe it's when I'm a little more stressed or something, but that's like the worst. And then you're trying to get up and you're trying to train, and you're told by your watch that your HRV has gone down and you shouldn't train. You know what I mean? It's like, but I can't not train for like 3 days, 4 days because I didn't sleep. So it's tricky. I think one thing I will mention right away, and these are just basic things, I don't even know for aging exactly, but make sure you're not drinking caffeine after, in the afternoon and evening. Even if you think you sleep okay, it's going to inhibit your ability to get a good quality sleep. So caffeine is something to be really careful with. And I think a lot of people, especially if you get into a cycle of like maybe not sleeping well, you wake up, you're kind of tired and you're trying to make it through the day, and then you're grabbing that caffeine mid-afternoon, it's just going to perpetuate that cycle. And it's just you're never going to be able to come out of that. And it could get worse where you're just needing more and more caffeine. So trying to really keep that caffeine to the morning time, because that is actually even for people who think they can tolerate caffeine, I would say. And so that's a big one. I think if you can try to train, if you have a poor night of sleep, unless it's really, really bad and it's inhibiting your ability to train, I do think that there can be a benefit to like trying to do some sort of training or stick to your training plan if it's one night. And you might find that you're tired enough the next night to sleep better. And sometimes you can kind of get out of that cycle. But sometimes if it's perpetual, then it can really inhibit. You may not even feel like training and you can't continue the training plan without some sort of detriment. But if it's just 1 or 2 nights here and there, I would just sort of try to train through it, and usually you'll get back onto a good sleeping schedule. But if all of a sudden you're noticing like several nights of the week, or it's happening 4 or 5 days in a row, then that's really where it becomes quite concerning, because that's when your ability to recover and even just function on a daily basis becomes impaired. Stress can be a big one. So I think it's just, there's so many, I think many people have heard all these strategies of like having a nighttime routine, but I'm just going to go ahead and say, like, I know this, and sometimes I fall off, and it's when I'm not being really good, when I'm working really late or doing things like on my phone until late, that I see that it doesn't do good things for my sleep. So just a reminder that it's probably good to not check your emails late, and to try to switch off the phone and maybe do something calming before bed, whatever that is for you. But this like little reminder that those things matter, and whatever you can do to kind of turn off the daily stress will help your sleep. Because I think, talk maybe a little bit about some of the stress stuff, but things do change as we get older. I was talking with someone the other day who has teenagers, and she's like, I stay up till midnight waiting for my kids to come home because I'm worried that they're supposed to come home. It was like 11 or midnight. I'm not going to argue whether that's a good curfew or not, but that's what she said. And so she's staying up until midnight because she's worried about her teenage children. And I understand that. I would do the same thing. But then she's waking up at 6 in the morning to go do her workout. Right? So it's like, that's not conducive to long-term, you're going to burn out. That's not good.
Right.
You have to get more sleep than that. Like most of the time, I mean, once in a while, that's okay. But that kind of thing, just those life changes that kind of inhibit your sleep. And I'm like, you're going to have a chat with they weren't teenage, I think they were like college age children that she had at home with her over the summer or something like that. So they weren't teenagers, but it was like that sort of situation. And she's worried, understandably. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's a whole life situation that I haven't had to encounter yet. But, that kind of thing. We're changing. We have teenagers, we have older kids, some of us who are, in our 40s and beyond. And so how is that impacting it? Or your job, responsibilities may change because maybe as we're older, we take on more management positions or different higher level positions that involve a lot more stress and a lot more, responsibility, and how is that impacting our life. So I think it's important to remember that when it comes to like sleep and stress kind of goes along with this, just thinking about those things that may have changed that may have nothing to do with aging. It's just the life changes that influence
Right. The
our
phase of
stress
life that
and
you're in.
our phase of life. Yeah. Because it may be with this woman, she's like, I sleep great, but I have to wake up at 6. And so she's not getting enough sleep. And so that's impacting her ability to like feel good and train and do everything she wants to. And so there's maybe, I don't know what the solution is there. I think it's like thinking about your own life and what's going on and what's kind of maybe influencing sleep that maybe wasn't there like earlier, or it's just changes. When we have babies, we just don't sleep long enough. They're waking up every 2 hours. And then when they're teenagers, we're staying up late worrying if they're going to come home on time. So,
Right.
these are all
Yep.
things that influence sleep, right? So trying to find the good sleep routine and, trying to stay in a good habits around sleep. And when we go to bed, when we wake up, try to keep that, all those things that we've probably heard before are really important. I mean, there are some sleep fueling strategies at night or things you can consider that might help with sleep. So one would be like a high protein snack before bed. I know they say like a lot of people follow intermittent fasting. You're told not to eat before bed, but for like an athlete, having a high protein snack with maybe a little bit of carbs. So an example would be like a Greek yogurt with some granola, like right before, and within an hour before bed, might just keep blood sugar levels a little bit more stable, maybe help us. That protein before bed might be helpful for sleep. So I do have some people who report when they have, especially when they're training a lot, like a high protein snack or something with more protein and a little bit of carb, they feel like they sleep better. So
Okay.
versus like what I
Right.
would not recommend is do not have a high carb meal right within an hour before bed. So don't eat a whole pizza or a bunch of pasta or like a ton of carbs right before bed. This is like a strategic, like hopefully you've had dinner 3 hours ago and then you're eating your high protein snack within an hour and it's not a large portion and there's not a ton of carbs. Because we
Okay.
do know that if you eat a ton of food, like a lot of carbs, like a big load of carbs, it will affect your sleep. I've seen it. I've seen how it impacts glucose levels and how that can influence your sleep. So what you eat and how you eat before bed can also have an impact. And then lastly, I'll say one more thing, but sleeping supplements can help too. So like magnesium, L-threonate, you can try those things like magnesium citrate or glycinate. But it's not a magic. Like
Yeah.
it's not like, oh, you're going to take these things and it's magic. It's just something that might help. But in my experience, they only help when I'm doing everything else right. And they're not like like something to replace all those other beneficial sleep strategies. So that's all.
Yeah.
I know we could
So
almost do a whole thing on sleep
yeah,
itself, but
the magnesium citrate. What's the other magnesium
there's
that is popular?
magnesium threonate, and that's the one that supposedly goes through the blood-brain barrier. So a lot of people kind of tout that as maybe more beneficial for sleep. But citrate or glycinate are both. I
Maybe
mean,
it's the
I haven't really
glycinate.
noticed a
Yeah.
difference.
Okay.
There's like several forms. The one I would maybe avoid would be the oxalate. There's some forms that are more absorbable than others, and that particular form doesn't absorb very well. So it's really great for if you have constipation, but it's not maybe super absorbable. So I just tend to go with glycinate, citrate, I think is it threonate? Anyway, now I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm thinking of L-theanine, and I'm like mixing those two up. Anyways, yeah.
because
just
I
looking at
was
the
taking
form.
magnesium citrate before bed, just a
Oh,
little
yeah,
powder, and you
that's
put it in the
fine.
water and stir it up and all that kind of
Uh-huh.
stuff. But we changed it, and it was called Calm or something like that. Was the
Calm,
label on the
yeah.
box. Now they had one that was called Max Calm or something like that. So I think it was the glycinate, like the
Oh,
magnesium
yeah.
glycinate one, and then I combined that with ashwagandha, like an
Oh, right.
ashwagandha
Okay. I
pill
could do,
before I would
yeah.
go to bed. So I put it with the rest of my like nighttime supplements, and I found that my sleep was actually deeper when I
Mm,
started that protocol, and I would dream more, and so I got into that deeper realm of sleep. So I thought that was I don't know if there's anything to it, or if it
interesting.
was just something
Yeah.
that just I experienced, or if there's something behind it and I just didn't know.
It just might depend on what type of magnesium is more absorbable, and then maybe with the ashwagandha, which is more of like it helps with stress. It's like a modulator, so it kind of helps maybe cortisol.
Okay,
Ashwagandha can like
yeah, the cortisol
reducing.
levels. Yep.
Yeah, so it could help. Yeah, that combination. Yeah, I think that's important to kind of experiment a little bit. Some people don't like the wild dreams and the crazy things that happen. Like I've noticed sometimes when I take the L-theanine at night or the what else? I've tried like a GABA supplement because I've noticed it helps, but it does kind of give me some wild dreams sometimes. So I'm like, I don't know. I
Yeah.
think I'll take the wild dreams and sleep over not sleeping. But
Yes.
some people don't like that. So you just have to kind of experiment and then just be aware, or like anything with supplements, just make sure they're a good quality. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't want to go down that rabbit hole right now, but just making
Yeah.
sure.
I did do something where the routine that you were talking about, and it was something that I discovered that just I don't perform well, is it was very common for me to get up in the morning and go into my office and do like coaching stuff and do my business stuff, and then go do a workout, and then come home and then log in for my full-time job, and then after my full-time job was over, do an evening workout, and then come back and do more coaching stuff and more business stuff, and then basically go from my office and just walk across the hall and just go to bed and try and fall asleep. And I discovered that it just was not working because
Mhm.
I'm asking my brain to stay engaged, and it's not going to just stop when I walk out of the room. So
Yeah,
it
like,
takes a
oh,
while
I'm
for the
done.
brain to
Yeah.
kind of unwind.
Hmm.
And so I made the commitment to 1 hour before I go to bed, I I have to stop working. So I shut everything off and I leave my office, and that means I just kind of go sit on the couch and maybe watch an hour's worth of TV, which is how my brain just kind of like unwinds. It doesn't engage very well. Uh, I mean, to me, if I sat down and reading to me is brain engaging. So
Engaging. Yeah.
I can't read before bed because then my brain starts to roll a little bit.
Listen to it, sleep stories. So there's like a couple you could just Google or find podcasts or download like Audible books, but there's one called Nothing Much Happens. It's a podcast that she does sleep
Mm,
stories, and they're very nice little light. I mean, they're not like brain engaging. They're just like comfy little stories. I don't even know how to describe it. Just
mm,
fun little like they're kind of like there's not a lot going on, but it's engaging enough that you're listening because it's kind of comforting. And
yeah.
that and her voice is very calming. So it's just that it's like a signal. And once you get in a habit of doing that, and then you start to sleep, it's almost like this concept of like you're disengaging from work, and now this your brain is like, oh, this is what we listen to, this is what we do before bed, and then
Right.
it's like starting to make that transition to sleep and bedtime. So I think that's something to think about, is having those habits or those routines, or that's something you do that kind of helps your brain be like, oh, okay, that's the end of the day. This is what we do before bedtime. And
Okay.
for me, it's the sleep stories. And I do notice when I'm consistent about that, I do sleep better. So
Yeah.
it could work for somebody. I mean, there's all sorts of different like tactics like that, but I think, I mean, and then we didn't even talk about like the way the room should be cool and how dark it should, like those are, but I mean, there's so many podcasts and different, like Matthew Walker is this, he's got, he's been the guest on a lot of podcasts. He's like a sleep expert. So if you really want to dive into sleep, he's got a book called, I think, Why We Sleep, and it's I have it downloaded. The reason I haven't listened to it is because it causes me anxiety about all the terrible things that happen when we don't sleep. So then
Yeah.
I worry about it, and I'm like, okay, that's not good either. It's great. I mean, the information he has to say is great, but then I'm like sitting there like, oh my gosh, it makes it worse because I'm like, I'm not sleeping, and then all these terrible things are happening. I'm gonna like have Alzheimer's, you know what I mean? And my
Yeah.
blood glucose is gonna be off, and all these terrible things. And I'm like, it's best if I don't know. Like
Yeah.
I know on a surface level,
Yeah.
it's best if I don't know all the details. Anyways,
Um,
you know how that is for us Type A people.
I do.
Let's talk a little bit. Like, I know we want to wrap this up because I think we're going to come back with a part 2. I think next week we're going to talk more into the fueling piece and more into the training for masters. So kind of dive into those pieces. But let's just
Mm.
talk really quickly about. We talked about it, I think, already a bit with the stress piece, but I do think it's important to revisit that just really quickly. Is that as we're aging, there are things that are changing in our life that for the better or for the worse. I mean, we might have. I think for some, it's like our kids are getting older. Maybe we have more time to train, or maybe we're empty nesters, And for some who have kids in college, and now you're not, doing the daily tasks of having little kids. And there's some things that change, but there may be others that kind of change, make it harder to train, or
Hmm.
maybe more stressful. So I think it's important. I mean, everybody's life circumstance is different. I mean, sometimes you have the kids move out, and then all of a sudden your aging parent is now needing your care. And that I've had people I've worked with who have that situation, which seems very stressful to me. And it makes me like, oh my gosh, like, what am I going to do when my mom's aging? Like, I start to
Right.
think about those things because you now have another thing to worry about. So there's just a lot, I think, and I think it's worth considering those factors when you're trying to pick your goals and figure out, how you're managing things and sleep. Or maybe you're one of the lucky people that has less stress, or you're retired and now you have all the time in the world to train, and it's just a different situation. So I guess, everybody's factors are different, but there are some things that happen when we get into our 40s and 50s and beyond that I think we just need to acknowledge may make it harder to train. I don't know if I have
I
much
mean,
to say about
usually,
that other.
usually at that phase of life, you're deep into your careers, and the responsibilities that you have in that aspect of your life tend to increase.
Uh-huh.
So it seems reasonable that with that additional level of stress, I mean that flows into everything else. Sleep quality and the ability to fuel properly. If you're a stress eater or whatever, it may not be something that younger athletes have to worry about, but maybe they worry about something that's different. Their incomes tend to be lower. They're just kind of getting started. And so maybe that's just a different kind of stress. But I mean, as we've said before, stress is stress and the body doesn't differentiate it. So,
Right. I think we just have to face that, even if we are even going back to like the replacements of things like hormones and stuff like that, it's just we cannot live forever. And there's going to be some decline that happens in our ability to manage and handle stress, or to bounce back from certain things is going to be less no matter how well we feel. I wish I could say differently, but I think something we all have to accept is that is the inevitable outcome, unless there's something they come up with that helps us live forever and not have to age. So it's just, I think the stress is different, but it may not be more stress. It's just that the way that our ability to handle it and be able to bounce back from it may be a little bit less. So we just need to be focusing more on the stress management and making sure that we're taking care of ourselves outside of training and in other aspects to make sure we aren't overdoing it. Because I think the consequences, just being overly stressed, and it's just, I think the consequences are a little bit harder to manage when we are older, unfortunately. And I don't have any insights into how to make that different because we're all getting older, and there's
yeah.
things that we cannot, you know, control in that aspect. I guess one bit of advice that I have for people is just to remember that the stress may be more, but maybe it may be less, or it may be just different, but their ability to handle it or recover from it is probably a little bit less as we age. So you need to take that in consideration when you're doing your training plans and all of that. You just want to make sure you understand that. And I don't know if I have any advice other than that. So it's just
Yeah.
a sad part of aging.
Part of the
Anyway,
game.
I don't know if I want to like end it on that. That seems kind of sad. I'm like, and I don't want to end it on a bad note.
I can try and find a way to end this on a positive note.
Okay.
As you were saying, that as we get older, our abilities to manage and handle stress may change, and you may be not as adept to managing that stress. I guess the one piece that I would say is that as we get older, at least we have wisdom to fall back on. So we do have a lot of past experiences that we can draw on to where we can say, well, I know that this didn't work when I tried this once before, but this one was successful. So let's go back to this. I think it gives you more tools in the tool belt to use when situations do arise. For instance, I find a lot of adult athletes, especially A-type personality triathletes, will sometimes dive deeper into their training when their stress levels rise. So they actually want to train more, or they train harder. And I think that can be good, but then I think that it can be bad as well, and I think that if they've experienced any past injuries from overtraining or ramping up volume too high, because you're trying to use that as a way to manage your stress,
Yeah.
as a coping mechanism, it may give you something to fall back on. It's like, oh, I've seen this happen before. I know that this is my tendency, so I have to find other ways to deal with it. Hopefully they're healthy ways. But I think at least it gives you some experience to know what has worked before and what hasn't. And so wisdom is valuable. We don't want to discount it.
As I get older, there's things I like when I was younger, I used to be way more worried about, or I guess now that I'm older, the wisdom piece is that I feel like I'm better at knowing what to let go, and kind of what I've been in one instance is just like the things that I can control, I try to control, and I've been better, I think, as I've aged, at letting go of the things that I cannot control and reminding myself of that. Whereas when I was younger, I used to fret about all sorts of things, I would have a lot of anxiety over all sorts of things, especially things that I had no control over. And that's that's kind of a waste, because I couldn't have done anything about it anyway. So I think thinking about it that way too, maybe our stress is different or more, but we maybe are, better able to handle it as we get older, hopefully, because we have more wisdom. So maybe that is a good way to end it. Yeah.
All right. So let's wrap that up before we come up with something else. Thank you guys for joining us in this episode of the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. This has been episode 112, where we've started a series on masters athletes and the nuances that they face as we get older, or more seasoned. Let's put it that way. We're getting more seasoned. We're not getting older. So our typical housekeeping. So if you've found this episode helpful, or it resonated with you, or if you know somebody else that you feel that this episode could help, I hope that you will consider sharing the episode with everybody, and leave a review and a comment. Those are you have no idea how helpful they are in terms of bringing the podcast to the forefront so that people can easily find us. As we've said from day one, we do not monetize this podcast. There's no commercials, there's no ads, there's no sponsors. We do this because we love it, and we want to come to you guys and share our insights. And we're not interested in trying to sell you supplements and mattresses and financial advice. So these reviews and comments help with the algorithms to pick us up and find where the chatter is taking place, so that when somebody goes out and they go and search for endurance sports, the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast is in that list. So It only takes just a second or two. So if you haven't left one, please, I hope that you will consider leaving one. They are greatly appreciated, and we thank you for that. We also have the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast group. So it's a private group that's on Facebook. We created it to build a community. So if you are not a member, all you have to do is just search for that name on Facebook. So it's the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast group. You answer one simple question and agree to the group rules, and it lets you right on in. Let's grow the community, and we'll learn and support each other as we move forward. So we thank you guys for considering that as well. We're also active coaches, so we're bringing on athletes onto our rosters. So if you are interested in talking with a coach or seeing if a coach would be able to help you, whatever situation that you're dealing with, if you want to try something new, you're just tired of looking for plans or looking for workout ideas, or you're an aging athlete and you have other stuff that you have on your plate, and you just want to turn over training plan creation to somebody else with wisdom and experience, we hope that you will consider reaching out to us as well. You can go to fuel2run.com for Coach Katie. She does dietetics and run training. You can go to tabularasaracing.com. That's for me, Coach Justin, where you can find one-on-one multi-sport coaching as well as single sport coaching, and I do custom training plans as well. I think that about does it for us this time on this episode. So we thank you guys for joining us. We thank you for the continued support that you continue to show, and we look forward to coming to you again next time. So for Coach Justin and Coach Katie, thank you guys very much, and we'll talk to you again later. All right. Bye-bye, guys. That wraps up today's episode of the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. Endurance sports have a way of teaching us patience, humility, and resilience, lessons that carry far beyond the workout. Progress in endurance sports doesn't come from shortcuts. It comes from consistency, discipline, and doing the work when it's not glamorous. Wherever you are on your endurance journey, keep trusting the process and honoring the work you put in each day. If today's episode resonated, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone to help on their endurance journey. Don't forget to join the conversation on our social sites to help build and foster a community where we all learn and support one another. We'll be back with more stories and insights from Coach Justin and Katie. Until then, visit the podcast website at theenduranceathletejourney.buzzsprout.com for more episodes from the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. Have questions or comments about the podcast? Feel free to send us an email at theenduranceathletejourney@gmail.com. For all things coaching, visit Coach Katie at fuel2run.com and Coach Justin at tabularasaracing.com. Again, thank you for listening to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast, and remember to find joy in the journey.